pandas.crosstab compute a simple cross-tabulation of two or more factors, and by default it computes a frequency table of the factors unless an array of values and aggregation function are passed. So if you want to compute a frequency table, you can use pandas.crosstab. In this pandas.crosstab overview, could you count smokers and non-smokers for each sex? Yes, you can count smokers and non-smokers for each sex in this data frame by using pandas.crosstab as shown in this summary. After applying the function of pandas.crosstab, you can get the non-smoker, smoker, and the time for smoking, dinner or lunch. This function has a lot of parameters, starting with index, columns, and so on. Let's start with the index parameter. The index parameter specifies values to group by in the rows, and this parameter will specify the columns whose unique values will be used to form the rows of the resulting data, the resulting cross tabulation. So the index parameter accepts array like series, list, or arrays and series, or list of arrays and series. Now let's import a library and start to see how the index parameter works. We import numpy as np and pandas as pd. From this data frame here of 6 smoker and time, could you count smokers and non-smokers for each sex? Probably yes. You could do that by using the pandas.crosstab, and the index should be the sex and smokers, and the rest the time for smoking. So to do that, let's first create this data frame. So if we create this data frame, and try to count number of smokers and non-smokers, then we should use the index parameter to specify the sex and also the smoking status. So if we use the index parameter to specify the, and let's see, so to count number of smokers and non-smokers for each sex, the index parameter comes into application. As you can see here, I have succeeded to know the number of females who don't smoke at dinner and at lunch, and the number of males who don't smoke at dinner, neither at dinner nor at lunch, and so on. The columns parameter will help us to specify values to group by in the columns, and this column parameter will accept array like series or list of arrays or series. So to understand this columns parameter, let's start to attempt this question. Let's start to count combination of smoke and time for each sex category. And here we understand very well how these columns parameter work. So from this example, as you can see, to count combinations of smoker and time for each sex, we should specify columns as smoker and also time, so we can compute the combination between a sex for combination for each sex category. Now let's create a data frame and see how it works. If you create this data frame, you can follow along what I'm doing by downloading an ebook. I've created a special ebook that contains all of this demonstration and codes and visuals and simple examples that we can help you to follow along and code together with me. So download that ebook in the description in order to follow along. So after creating this data frame, we can see how the index parameter can help us to count combination of smoker and time for each category of sex. So to do that, you can see if we specify columns parameter this way, and for smoker and time, we can get the combination of smoker, smoking status, and time. For example, here, smoker no, time dinner lunch, smoker yes, dinner lunch. So for each sex and male, for each sex, which is a female and male, the values parameter is an array of values to aggregate according to the factors, and it requires a function to be specified. So the values parameter accepts array like, and it is option. So let's see this example in order to understand how this values parameter works. So could you find the maximum tip amount for each combination of sex and smoker status? From this we have sex, have smoker status, smoking status, and tip. So if you want to find the maximum tip amount for each combination of sex and smoker, for each combination of sex and a smoking status, then the values parameter comes into application. So what should we do here? First, let's create a data frame and try to see. So from this data frame, if you want to get the maximum tip amount for each combination of sex and smoker status, you can use the value parameter from this value. You see the values parameter, you can specify tip values for tip. So, and the other columns smoker and the index smoker. So to achieve that in this data frame, you can use the values parameter, and here you can see the maximum tip for females who don't smoke is 5. The maximum tip for a female who smoke is 5.5. The male same. The male 4.5 for male who don't smoke, and 6 for male who smoke. The rownames parameter is used to label the rows in the resulting table. The row names parameter accepts sequence and it is none by default. If passed must match the number of row arrays passed. Here, rename the row index to sexo. For example, if you want to rename the sex into sexo and smoker into another name, you could specify it by using the values, the row names parameter. So let's see in the example. From this data frame, if we create a cross tab, you could see here we can rename row names to sex. So if we comment this, you see it is sex. If you want to change the name into another name, for example sexo, you could use the row names parameter. It is shown here, sexo. Any other names, whatever you please, or the name that fit. So the columns name, the colnames parameter is used to label the calls in the resulting table. The colnames parameter accepts a sequence and it is none by default. If passed, it must match the number of columns arrays passed. For example, here, rename the columns index smoker to fumado. We have this. Instead of smoker, the call names, instead of smoker here, we could rename it into fumado. From this data frame, let's create it and see. From this data frame, we could rename the smoker into fumado. Let me comment this to show you how it works. For example, here the column names, it is smoke. The column name, it is smoke. If you want to change it into your favorite name, for example here fumado, you use call names parameter and you can specify like this. You see, fumado instead of smoke. So the aggregate function parameter, it accepts a function and it is optional. It specifies. If it is not specified, if it is specified, it requires values to be specified as well. Let's see this example in order to understand how it works. Sum and the mean of tips for each combination of sex and smoker. We will use the aggregate function to get all of them and accept a function which is sum and the average or the mean for the tips, and in each combination of a sex and a smoke. From this data frame, we can get the sum and the mean of the tips for each combination of sex and smoker. As you can see, the aggregate function can give us the sum and the mean. The sum and the mean for each combination of sorry, for each combination of smoker status, smoking status, and sex. You can use other functions like max. Let's try to put max. You see, it can give you. Can use other function like try median. It can give you, and so on. So this is how the aggregate function can help us to get calculations of things like this, sum and median. Let's see the margin parameter, which will help us to add row or columns margin subtotals. It is boolean and default to false. So if you want to add row or columns margin subtotals, like here for example, sum and mean, we have the subtotals at the end of rows and columns. The margins parameter is responsible to do that. So sum and the mean of the tips for each combination of sex and smoker, and also include the row and column subtotals. So to achieve that, let's add the function here, the parameter here called margin and called true. Let's try to see. You see there are column and row added here for subtotals. So if you want to rename the all in rows and columns, you can use the margins name parameter. The margins name parameter will specify the name of the row or column that will contain the totals as here. The name for this column can be changed from all to other. So this margins parameter, it is a string, and by default it is set to all. As you can see here, we have not specified the margins name, but we have specified margins true. So the margins name is by default true, is by default all when you set the margins true. So if you want to change from all to other, you can say margins name, and give it other name, for example totals. If you do that, you will see it changes from all into totals. The dropna parameter does not include columns whose entries are all none. For example, here in this data frame, we have status column whose entries are all none. And if set to true, rows with none value in any column, for example here, a quantity has a none, and price has a none. So rows of these columns will be omitted before computing the margins. Let's see. If set to true, you see, so the columns with whose entries are none are omitted, and the rows and the columns and the rows who with the none in any column will be omitted before computing the margins. If you put false, they will be included. Then the rows with none values in any column will be included. You see? The normalize parameter accepts all index and columns, all 0 and 1, and default to false because it's a boolean. The purpose of the normalize parameter is to find the proportion by dividing all the values by the sum of values. For example, here is in this data frame, if we generate a table of sex and smoker status in a data frame, and you want to show proportions relative to the entire data set, then you can pass all or true and normalize all values in this data frame. For example, you see, if we want to pass a normalize here parameter to see the proportion for all values, you could specify the is true or is true or you see, it has calculated the proportions for the entire data set because the total in the data set is 10. So taking 1 divided by 10, 0.1, 4 divided by 10, 0, 5 divided by 10, 0.5, and so on. Same, we can also put true, give this all, give the same answer. Say all in O. So let's make true. It works with true here. You see, you can see the proportions for the all values. If you want to normalize over each row, then you have to pass the index. Here you have to say index, index, and see. Index, you see. So here it is, and a proportion over each row. How, for example, here 0.2 proportion over each row, 5 divided by 1, 0.2, 5 divided by 4, 0.8, 5 divided by 1, 0.2. So it is a proportion over each row. So also you can put, instead of index, you can put it 0. Let's see. Yes. To normalize over each column, you can pass the weight column to see. Oh, can you pass columns? You see. So 5 divided by 1, 0.2, 5 divided by 4, same. All 1. Can pass all 1. Can get the same result. You see, it gets to normalize over each columns.